We were accused of scaremongering, I think, by the Chancellor, the Carrington. No, it's serious. It's a very serious problem. And I'd just like to put the energy crisis into perspective with the economic crisis that's been talked about as well, obviously. It's very important. Energy is at the heart of the problem for three very simple reasons. The first is that there's been a lot of talk about the 45 billion tax giveaway impact on public sector borrowing. But the cost of the currently designed energy capping announced on the 1st of October will be at least double that. And that is a serious matter.
And could be more.
And it could be more. And it's become more unaffordable with the fall in the value of sterling, which has increased the sterling cost of gas imports, which we're going to be essentially dependent upon during the winter. And that's one reason. The second reason is that now, if we have, as many viewers probably don't understand, is that the grid have responsibility for day-to-day real-time management of power, but they don't have the same responsibility in gas. So if the problem is, if there's a shortage of gas, then the only option they have available is a gas deficit warning, which normally precedes an emergency shutdown by about 24 hours, probably sometimes less.
And indeed, Jacob Rees-Mogg has said that as and when the blackouts come, if they come, hospitals will be prioritised. Yeah. But ordinary households would have, what, 2 or 3 hours a day without any energy?
No. The priorities are domestic heating must be kept on.
OK.
Essential services. And power generators for obvious reasons, because we're 60% dependent on gas power generation.
Are you saying that industry would pay the price of this?
Industry will pay the price. It's been known for years that this is every DNO, a district national operator, district regional operators and grid have lists of companies. When it comes to a GDW, gas deficit warning, leads to an emergency, they immediately contact those companies and say, we're going to turn you off. Those companies may have no longer than a few hours to adjust to that. Now, my fear is that if the gas supply situation is not managed properly by Ofgem and the grid, then we're in danger of there being gas deficit emergency, which would in fact lead to swathes of industry being out of action. The impact on output and employment would be significant. And of course, it would have ramifications in terms of us rolling into even more longer period of stagflation and higher interest rates. And the third reason is linked to that, is that if that were to happen, then the prospect that this government is holding out that we are going to grow out of this crisis and fund government borrowing through higher revenues from economic growth is not going to happen. So at the heart of the discussion about bond prices today is an energy crisis, and it needs to be addressed. There are 4 things I would like, if Jacob Rees-Mogg was here with us tonight, I would say to him, there are 4 things I would like you to do before breakfast.
So these are the positives. I mean, this is the way that we can alleviate...
This is minor things that could mitigate the damage. Yeah. The first one is to give CEO at Centrica a ring and say, how are you getting on with injecting gas into the Rough storage facility, which apparently is taking place. But it needs to be fully completed if it's to have any impact in the winter.
Just for viewers and listeners, this was our major gas storage site.
Which they closed 4 years ago.
Which they closed, yeah.
Yes. Wrongly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So I would say, well, and also say to Centrica, what revenue support do you need to make it full in the next 2 or 3 months? Give us 10 more days of respite, and we only have 2 days of aggregate, demand support on storage compared to 25% on average demand across Europe.
In Germany and Poland.
Yeah,
and
even longer. But the point is that is one thing I would do. The second thing I would do is say to him, I'd say bring in the CEOs of Grid and Ofgem and say, what steps? Be please specific. What steps have you taken to ensure that major gas users can maybe, possibly with some incentive, be prepared to voluntarily curtail in advance, so that when you're sitting there in front of your computer and you see a gas shortage emerging, you can say, oh, but that's okay, we've got a bit of storage and now we've got a bit of self-curtailment we can handle. Yeah. That may cost money. Yeah. We need to do it. Yeah. The third thing, I think, is to look at the costs of the capping scheme. It is unaffordable, it needs to be adjusted, and the best way of doing it is to copy what the Germans have done. The Germans have put in 200 billion for caps for consumers on energy. What they have done, though, is put a volume qualifying restraint on it. So that effectively, if you consume above a certain number of units of electricity or gas, the subsidy will not apply, the cap won't apply. So it acts as an incentive to reduce demand.
To reduce fuel consumption.
Correct.
Yeah.
So...
Okay, and lastly...
that's something we could do quite, which would be... And the fourth thing is, I mean, I don't understand this, and nobody I spoke to, and I've been around a while in the industry, could understand why Jacob Rees-Mogg was carrying around a file which had in it the details of the launch of a national program for helping people to understand some practical issues that they could do to curtail demand.
And the government didn't want to campaign?
No, and it's a no-brainer because, quite frankly, even if there was a good response collectively across in the population, most economists like myself would predict that perhaps at least 5% reduction in aggregate consumption could be achieved in the next 3 to 4 months, which could have a serious positive impact on bills and reduce the risk of energy rationing, which is very important.